When it comes to top-tier powder and stunning alpine ski terrain, few places are better than the state of Utah. But over the past few years, the state has seen an explosive surge in visitation, which has reshaped the ski scene as we know it. But while multiple factors have made Utah ski resorts more accessible over the past few years, they've also exposed a painful irony. The more people who flock to Utah, the harder it becomes to enjoy the slopes. So this raises the question, has the surge in popularity created an unsustainable experience? Well, in this video, we'll go through the details behind Utah's visitation spikes and the associated infrastructure strain, operational controversies, and labor unrests that have followed in its wake, with some of these developments only having happened in the past few days. Before we jump in, be sure to stay tuned until the end of the video. We're doing a $500 giveaway, and we don't want you to miss out on it. With that all being said, let's jump in. So the first thing we need to start with is, just how big has the surge in Utah's popularity been? Well, over the past 5 years, Utah's ski industry has experienced a significant surge in visitation, reflecting a growing interest in the state's highly competitive winter sports. During the 2021-2022 season, Utah's 15 ski resorts collectively reported 5.8 million skier visits, surpassing the previous record of 5.3 million visits in the 2020-2021 season. This upward trend continued into the 2022-2023 season, which saw a remarkable 7.1 million skier visits, a 22% increase from the prior season and the highest in the state's history. That particular season was also one of the best on record for the state's snow totals, and although the 2023-2024 season experienced a slight decline to approximately 6.8 million skier visits, it still ranks as the second highest on record. Over the past 5 years, Utah's ski industry has achieved an overall visitation increase of 32%, underscoring the state's huge and growing appeal as a destination for skiing and riding. A big factor that's enabled both the large transplant population and vacation crowd to visit Utah ski resorts more frequently is the introduction of the Epic and Ikon passes. These multi-resort mega passes have made the state's best ski resorts more accessible than ever, but especially within the past few years, not without significant challenges. In large part thanks to their mostly week-long or unlimited access policies, these multi-resort passes have driven record-breaking visitation, and while this might be a good thing for the state's ski industry on the surface, the demand has been so high that resorts have not been able to properly handle it. The surge in visitation has hit some resorts harder than others. In Utah, Park City and Solitude in particular have faced especially intense pressures as the sole unlimited access options on their respective passes. As not just the only unlimited access, but now the only Utah resort at all on the Epic Pass, Park City has become a lightning rod for visitation spikes. Its status as the largest ski area in the United States by skiable acreage, with 7,300 acres of terrain, makes it a natural draw for Epic Pass holders. However, this distinction has created immense strain. On peak days, lift lines can exceed 45 minutes or even an hour, and the resort's infrastructure struggles to keep pace with demand. And this is even outside the events that have happened over the past couple of weeks, which we'll cover later in this video. On the Ikon Pass side, Solitude faces a similar dilemma. While it's nowhere near as big as Park City, Solitude has become a magnet for local Ikon skiers and riders thanks to its unlimited access on both the full and base passes. On the other hand, other Ikon resorts in the state, such as Alta, Snowbird, Brighton, Deer Valley, and Snow Basin, limit pass holders to 7 days each on the full pass and 5 days each on the base passes, effectively funneling a higher proportion of day-to-day visitation to Solitude, especially on weekends and powder days. But while Park City and Solitude have arguably been impacted the most, the vast majority of the other mountains on these pass products are still feeling the heat of the visitation interest. And rather than leaving or restricting access on these passes, most, albeit not all of these resorts, have added new, less than user-friendly policies to manage the influx of skiers and riders. The Cottonwood Canyons, which are home to Alta, Snowbird, Brighton, and Solitude, are ground zero for Utah's ski traffic issues. On powder days, the narrow Big and Cottonwood Canyon roads transform into gridlocked highways, with miles-long backups of hopeful skiers and riders a common occurrence. The Cottonwoods are home to some of the snowiest ski terrain in the world, which makes for excellent skiing and riding conditions, but also creates dangerous driving conditions that make the roads prone to avalanches and often result in highway closures throughout the season. For many, the commute to these resorts has become just as challenging as the skiing and riding itself. So what's been done to solve these problems? Well, over the past 5 years, resorts and local authorities have introduced several measures to address the gridlock, but notably, none of them have involved limiting multi-resort pass sales. Instead, Alta, Snowbird, Solitude, and Brighton have all rolled out paid parking systems requiring advanced reservations. Park City has done something similar on all of its Park City mountainside lots, with the town of Park City suffering from similar congestion problems to the Cottonwoods despite easier to drive roads. Utah's Powder Mountain has also rolled out its own set of new parking policies, but that resort's recent changes have been so wild and so specific to that one mountain that we're saving our thoughts on that resort for a dedicated video later on. At Alta, Solitude, and Brighton, no free parking is available when their reservation policies are in effect, while at Snowbird and Park City, there's a mix of reserved and first come first served parking. Parking prices range from $10 to $25 per car, with discounts for cars carrying 3 or more people. At most of these resorts, carpools of 4 or more people have been able to park for free, although at some resorts, this has recently increased from a complimentary parking policy for 3 or more people in past years. While this approach has helped control traffic, it comes with its trade-offs. For locals accustomed to last-minute powder day decisions, the need to reserve parking in advance has made skiing and riding less spontaneous. Additionally, the added parking costs have increased the financial burden on skiers and riders who don't carpool, making an already expensive sport even pricier. Finally, a lack of cohesive parking policies has somewhat undermined the effectiveness of these efforts. In particular, the differing approaches of Alta and Snowbird, the two resorts with shared access via the Little Cottonwood Canyon access road, have created unintended consequences that arguably shoot one another in the foot. Alta has adopted a strict paid parking reservation system on Fridays, weekends, and holidays. This approach aims to reduce traffic by requiring skiers to secure a spot in advance, eliminating the unpredictability of cars circling the canyon in search of last-minute openings. However, Alta's policy effectiveness is essentially undermined by Snowbird's more flexible approach just down the road. Unlike Alta, Snowbird maintains a hybrid parking policy. While some lots require reservations or have carpool-only restrictions, others remain first come, first serve, and are free of charge. On busy days, this partial availability of free parking often results in a significant number of last-minute visitors heading to Snowbird, especially on high-demand powder days. Unfortunately, many of these last-minute visitors drive through Little Cottonwood Canyon without a clear plan. When they can't park at Snowbird after their first come first serve lots fill up, they just create additional unwanted congestion in the canyon and reduce the effectiveness of Alta's carefully structured reservation system. There are often signs at the bottom of the canyon when Snowbird's unreserved parking spots fill up, but many drivers just go up and try to find a spot anyway. That being said, there are some significant improvements this year. Starting with the 2024-25 season, enforcement of the traction law in the Cottonwood Canyons has become significantly stricter. On days with significant snow accumulation, police are actively stopping vehicles at the canyon mouths to ensure traction compliance, making sure all cars either have chains installed or have appropriate snow tires on all 4 wheels. This represents a major shift from previous seasons, when enforcement was more sporadic. Okay. So Utah's parking policies have gotten a lot more restrictive in recent years. But wait a minute, why are so many people still driving to the resorts? Well, Utah's public transportation services, which would ideally provide a desirable alternative to get to the resorts, have been facing a years-long crisis. The Utah Transit Authority, or UTA, implemented major cuts to ski bus services in 2022. At the time, they cited driver shortages and budget constraints. These reductions drastically limited public transportation options for the Cottonwood Canyons and completely eliminated direct service from Salt Lake City to Park City. The 2022 cuts gutted bus frequency and capacity for Little and Big Cottonwood Canyons, with routes operating fewer times per day and covering fewer stops. The 953 ski bus route to Little Cottonwood Canyon was completely discontinued, while the 972 route to Big Cottonwood Canyon and the 994 route to Little Cottonwood Canyon were halved in frequency. The lack of accessible transit disproportionately impacted visitors without access to canyon parking and left car-free skiers with limited options for reaching the slopes. But notably, it also impacted skiers and riders who did have a car but were willing to take the bus to get up there instead. To give the UTA some credit, they partially restored services in 2024 by introducing new routes to Little Cottonwood Canyon. However, even with the new routes, public transit to Little Cottonwood Canyon still falls short of the pre-2022 levels. And despite the improvements in Little Cottonwood Canyon, Big Cottonwood Canyon has yet to see any restoration of its lost transit services. No direct bus routes from Salt Lake City to Park City have been reinstated since the 2022 cuts, but honestly, this isn't as big of a deal as the Cottonwoods bus cuts, since lots of Park City visitors stay directly in town rather than in the Salt Lake area. However, it doesn't help Park City's already strained infrastructure and persistent traffic issues. The practical challenges of reaching the mountain, whether through traffic, parking costs, or limited transit options, mean that Visitation effectively self-regulates. These measures effectively deter skiers and riders, especially those without large wallets, without explicitly capping numbers through pass restrictions. One place this strategy is quite evident is in Solitude's recent removal of blackout dates for Ikon base pass holders. While this change technically grants unrestricted access to Solitude during holidays, the reality is that very few visitors can take advantage of it due to the logistical hurdles. The lack of restored bus service means visitors will have to rely on personal cars, and Solitude's expensive, reservation-based parking system further complicates access. For some, it's a stark reminder that while passes may seem inclusive on paper, the realities of access tell a very different story. But while the Cottonwoods have faced their fair share of hardships over the past few years, we'd argue they're nothing compared to the myriad of issues compounding at Park City. Under Vail Resorts' ownership, Park City has faced significant challenges in recent years, including disputes with local authorities, canceled lift projects, and labor unrest among ski patrol staff. Widely publicized issues really started to come to a head in 2022. During that year, Park City Resort planned upgrades to its lift infrastructure by replacing the Silverlode 6-pack with an 8-person chair, and both the Eagle and Eaglet triple lifts with a new 6-person chair and a new alignment. These upgrades would have aimed to alleviate congestion and improve the skier experience at the Park City side of the resort. However, the Park City Planning Commission halted these projects in June 2022, citing concerns over increased demands into town from the higher lift capacity. As a result, the planned lift installations were canceled for the 2022-2023 season. By the time the commission paused approval, several lift components had already been shipped to Park City, highlighting the unprecedented and last-minute nature of their cancellation. The construction halt soon became permanent, and in a telling move, the parts for the new lifts were shipped north to Whistler Blackcomb, where they have now been installed as replacements for other lifts. Unfortunately, these cancellations have left some notable issues on the mountain, especially with regard to crowd flow. First off, the Eaglet triple chair had already been removed in anticipation of its replacement, leaving the medium-sized terrain park area it served with no dedicated chairlift service. While this lift never attracted a huge crowd, skiers and snowboarders now have to rely on the Crescent and King Kong lifts to access this zone, creating inefficiencies and adding more strain on those specific lifts. But perhaps more importantly, the overcrowding issues that the Silverlode and Eagle upgrades were meant to address remain unresolved, as skiers and riders continue to face very long waits during peak times. Adding to the frustration, over the past few months, it's become clear that Park City's lift problems could become worse. Not only is it going to be increasingly difficult for new lifts to be installed, it now seems possible that one of Park City's lifts could be forced to shut down in the short to medium term future. The specific issue has to do with Park City's town lift, with the owners of the land beneath its base currently suing Vail Resorts to terminate their lease. The lawsuit stems from a 2023 incident in which a skier was injured at the lift's base area, with the owners alleging that Vail Resorts failed to defend them against liability claims. This dispute has added to the growing tensions between Vail and the local community, with the landowner signaling a desire to end their relationship with Vail Resorts entirely. But that's not the end of the story. The current landowning family recently listed the Townlift Plaza property on sale for $27 million, raising questions about the new ownership of the lift's base terminal land. Vail Resorts has insisted that it will continue operations as usual, citing its rights under the existing lease. However, the legal battle casts doubt on the long-term availability of the town lift, which doesn't go all that fast or serve all that much terrain, but provides a very useful link between Main Street and the mountain that those staying downtown save tons of time from using. But if you thought that tensions between Vail Resorts and Park City locals couldn't get any worse after that, you probably haven't been following the news. The issue of community trust has seriously come to a head over the past few weeks, with an unresolved labor dispute between Park City Ski Patrol and Vail Resorts spiraling out of control. The labor dispute has been years in the making, culminating in a strike that's put a spotlight on simmering tensions over wages, working conditions, and the broader relationship between employees and the resort operator. Negotiations began in earnest this past April when the last union contract expired, as the Park City Professional Ski Patrol Association pushed for higher wages to keep pace with the rising cost of living and the increased demands of their role. With housing costs in Park City among the highest in the state and continuing to rise, many patrollers argued that their current pay made it unsustainable to live anywhere near the mountain they serve. So what did the union want? Well, they sought base pay raises from $21 an hour to $23 an hour, pointing to Vail Resorts' record-setting revenues in recent years as evidence that the company could afford better compensation. The union also asked for improvements to benefits, including a healthcare stipend that would allow patrollers to stay on the same insurance policy year-round, as well as additional hours flexibility and holiday pay. In response to those demands, Vail countered that it had already raised patrol wages by over 50% in the past 4 seasons, with the average pay now exceeding $25 an hour, and offered an additional 4% wage increase for the 2024-25 season, alongside a $1,600 equipment allowance. However, this wage increase would have been half of what the patrollers requested, and union leaders argued that this offer fell short of what was needed to attract and retain qualified patrollers, especially given the increasing risks and responsibilities of their job on one of the country's largest, busiest, and still growing ski mountains. By December 2024, with negotiations stalled and tensions running high, the union voted unanimously to strike. So Vail Resorts was faced with a strike at one of their busiest resorts during one of the busiest periods of the winter. So what did they do? Well, to keep operations running, the company has leaned on patrollers from its other resorts, shipping in staff from across the country to cover essential safety duties at Park City. In this vein, they're trying to essentially temporarily replace the Park City Ski Patrol team with patrollers who are completely new to the mountain and are having to get up to speed really quickly. While this approach has allowed Vail Resorts to keep Park City from shuttering entirely, it's also raised eyebrows among locals and some visitors, especially in a position so critical as safety. The strikers are making sure they aren't going unnoticed. Actions have spilled into Park City's base areas, where striking ski patrollers have organized picket lines to bring attention to their cause, often accompanied by supportive chants and cheers from locals and visitors who sympathize with their plight. It's worth noting that while the union has stopped short of asking those who've already bought passes from skiing and riding, they have asked Park City visitors to boycott any ticket, food, and retail purchases to Vail Resorts during the strike. The situation has been changing rapidly over the last few days, but a couple of things have become clear. First off, Park City is lagging behind its competitors in terms of ability to get terrain open, with only around a fifth of its trails open as of January 1st. Park City says that a below-average winter has been a significant factor in the slow roll of terrain openings, and it is true that Utah hasn't had the best season so far, so they do have somewhat of a point there. But on the other hand, with nearby Deer Valley seeing very similar snow conditions and already having half of its footprint open, several questions have been raised about how the strike and lack of experienced patrollers has played a role here. It's also telling that in recent days, Park City actually removed the trail percentage indicator on its website, indicating that Vail Resorts is feeling the heat from the situation at hand unfolding. However, guests can still see the raw number of trails open, so if this change happens to be damage control, it seems to be a pretty short-sighted attempt at it. Another thing that's made it clear that Park City's management is feeling the heat, a video response from Park City Mountain VP and COO Deidre Walsh addressing the situation. In the video, she acknowledges that the strike has impacted the resort's ability to get terrain on the canyon side open. But notably, comments on that video are turned off, so Park City Resort and Vail Resorts as a whole seem to be aware that they are losing the PR war right now. It's also worth noting that Walsh sent an internal email to Park City staff stating essentially the same thing. Finally, with the strike now extending over a week in length, customer testimonials have started to roll in, and they have not been good. Some customers have claimed that they've had to step in to help injured skiers due to unacceptable resort response times, and that even in certain cases when patrol has arrived, they've come solo and without adequate transportation equipment down the mountain. While we do not have concrete proof of these claims, or, if true, just how out of the ordinary they actually are, their widely publicized nature on both traditional and social media channels is the last thing Vail Resorts needs right now. Park City's own alert system isn't doing it any publicity favors either, with reports of lift interruptions due to overcrowding and snow safety issues. But wait a minute, Vail Resorts still turned a net profit of $230 million this past fiscal year, so why are they so concerned over a raise that would cut into less than half of 1% of that profit at most? Well, one could argue that the labor dispute at Park City has been fueled not just by disagreements over compensation, but by Vail Resorts' broader financial posture in a period of declining growth. The company's refusal to meet the Ski Patrol Union's demands comes as Vail faces financial headwinds, with its once rapid revenue growth now beginning to flatten. While the company is still wildly profitable, Vail's stock price has dipped over the past year, reflecting market concerns about slowing expansion and increasing operational challenges. Presumably in order to make its financials look better, Vail Resorts appears reluctant to take on additional expenses of any sort. The company is tightening its belt across the board, with a slowdown in capital investments across its portfolio and significant layoffs pending at its corporate office. While the union's unwillingness to budge so far reflects an argument for fair pay that considers both inflation and the risks of their job, Vail's unwillingness to budge so far underscores a company-wide strategy focused on appeasing its shareholders and continuing to increase profits. How Vail Resorts handles this dispute in the coming weeks could set a precedent not just for Park City, but for all of its operations across North America. The company's actions so far have not gone unnoticed, as evidenced by a recently leaked email revealing dissatisfaction among ski patrol unions at Breckenridge, Crested Butte, and Keystone, all of which are also owned by Vail Resorts, on top of Park City itself. In the email, these unions expressed frustration over Vail's decision to pressure patrollers from other resorts to cross picket lines, as well as the company's general focus on using its cash to focus on stock buybacks and cash dividends. If Vail Resorts gives in on these negotiations and other patrollers demand similar wage and benefit increases, we could see their net profit cut down by 1, 3, or even 5%, which, given the way public companies work, is probably not something that shareholders would be happy with, but we can't know for sure until it happens. At least as of today, it seems that there's some good news, and the Park City Ski Patrol Union says that there has been significant progress towards reaching an agreement in recent hours. We really hope they do, because this whole fiasco has ruined a lot of people's vacations so far, and there are probably thousands of people who feel like they just threw months of their savings down the drain at this point. It's worth iterating just how unprecedented of a situation this strike is, with the patrollers at Park City being the first to walk off the job at a major ski resort in perhaps over 5 decades. And even if Vail Resorts and the Ski Patrol Union reach an agreement today, we can assure you this story is not over, be it for the Park City community, ski patrol unions across the US, and Vail Resorts as a whole. So while each specific mountain might be facing its own unique issues, the mounting challenges facing Utah ski resorts are all symptoms of two broader circumstances reshaping the state: an increasing population and rising cost of living. Over the past few years, Utah has seen such an influx of wealthier residents and tourists that local workers, especially those who make Utah ski resorts run, from bus drivers to lifties to ski patrollers, have found it increasingly difficult to afford housing or basic necessities near their job. The tension between rising demand and limited capacity is reflected in nearly every aspect of Destination Utah skiing and riding today. Overcrowding, traffic gridlock, transit cuts, restrictive paid parking policies, and Park City's labor and development disputes are all part of a larger struggle to adapt to a state transformed by growth. For many, Utah remains a bucket list winter sports destination, but if these issues aren't addressed, the so-called greatest snow on earth may no longer be enough to sustain the skiing and riding culture that has defined this state for decades. What do you think about what's going on in the ski scene in Utah? Have you been skiing or riding in the state recently? Let us know with a comment below. Also, we want to hear from you on the direction of peak rankings as a whole, and to show our gratitude, we're giving away $500 to one of our lucky supporters. All you have to do is fill out our 2025 engagement survey, which is linked in the description below. This survey is incredibly important to the future of our channel and the business as a whole, and with your help, we'll be able to produce content and products that are useful and relevant to you. You can use the $500 for whatever you want: a new pair of skis or a board, credit towards a Peak House trip, or even a one-day Park City lift ticket and hotel for a night. We'll go over the survey results and announce the winner in a live stream later this month. Special thanks to our Peak patrons. For more information on Utah and over 100 ski resorts around the world, check out peakrankings.com. See you for the next one.